And we're live. We're here.
We're
McGravy, how
here.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's been crazy recently. We were talking about that before we started.
Mm,
But it's been a little crazy recently with all the format changes going
yeah.
online. We said, I said this is like, I made a tweet saying like it's going to be 24-hour companion stream time, baby. And other people are saying, don't worry, I got all the coverage. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way anyone's going to have
You're
the coverage.
you're gonna have to do it in shifts. You're gonna have multiple people come onto your stream and like take over, do like 8 hour shifts just to keep the stream up the entire time.
Yeah, it's just impossible. Like it's just not going to be possible with like,
No.
and I feel bad for the desk in particular because they're going to have to rotate probably casters who do 2 games and then they'll just like they'll have like an IV of caffeine directly to their
Yeah.
veins.
Poor Scott. Poor Scott. He joins the desk and this is like his first like 2 months of working. He gets hit with this
It's a
shit.
trial by fire for Scott, definitely and Scott obviously for those who aren't aware. We know him like that. We can say it's Custa.
Yeah. We can say Scott because
We
we
can
know him
say
like that.
Scott. We know him like
We're
that.
boys.
But this is the second episode. We're on Hero Select. I think a very successful first episode with Blase last time. So this is McGravy, Los Angeles Valiant. His socials are also plugged below him. He's a simp extraordinaire. Or I guess you're not simping anymore, right? You're done.
I think Valent's kind of retiring from the simping. It's kind of like the Twitter brand at this point, so we have to like stick with it. We keep moving in that direction. But yeah, I like the background by the way. Good
Thank you.
choice.
Yeah, it's a good one, right? I'm trying to get more creative with my green screens. I think green screen has added a lot of capabilities for me to change what I can do. I think it will add a lot to the companion streams as well. But that's enough
Mm,
about the companion streams because we're here to talk about you,
mm,
McGravy.
on me.
So the most important questions to be asked always, and sort of the start for every one of these Hero Select episodes, because it's sort of a journey of each player or coach or personality through Overwatch and to
Mm.
Overwatch League or wherever that right now, is the three big ones. Why, when, and how. So first, why Overwatch? Why Overwatch is a game when you could have chosen like League of Legends, you could have maybe pursued CS:GO. Why Overwatch?
That's actually funny because one of the coaches we have right now is Reprise. He was my ex-teammate in CS:GO. He was probably actually the first friend that I ever made in like esports in general.
Mm-hmm.
So we played Counter-Strike, and he ended up quitting before me to play Overwatch. And he was harping on the game. He's like, "You gotta try it. You gotta try it. You gotta try it." And I think I didn't end up trying it until open beta, maybe like towards the open event in beta, and I started playing it and I don't think I loved it at first. I thought it was all right. I think I ended up playing like Widowmaker because I came from CS, and I just gave it a try for a couple of days. And at one point, it just stuck. Like I was screaming, and it just kind of like stuck with me. And I realized how much I enjoyed the game. And then from that point on, it
So it
was
was still DPS at that time, or was it off tank by that point?
still DPS,
Still
still
DPS. Ah,
DPS.
so like most players, including myself, you didn't start with an off tank necessarily. You were like DPS, and then you transitioned into that.
Hmm.
So like, I guess then a great question from there is like, when you learned you loved the game, when did it go from you playing casually to like scrimming? Because your first team in 2016 was a team I can't even find information on. Like a lot of these teams are like incomplete. You just have the team names. It's Pixel
Yeah,
Juju, as far as I'm aware,
Pixel
in
Juju.
2016.
Uh
And
huh.
how did it go from I like the game to I'm scrimming the game? And were you still like an off tank or were you a DPS at that point?
I was a DPS at that point. I think it was right after season 1 hit, and like I saw like the rankiness. I saw like I think I was. It was before they changed the SR system to like the thousands of numbers. But I think I was like 76 season 1, and I realized like I'm a little better than I thought I was at this game. And then season 2 is when I really started putting like my foot down and started grinding the game. And yeah, it's around right after Pixel Juju is when I really started, going hard. And I took time off of school. I told my parents like, hey, like give me. I think I would have ended up telling my parents was, hey, I sat them down. I was like, hey, give me a year.
So
If it
you
doesn't
were in
work
high
in a
school at this
year,
time or were you
no, it
college?
was start of college
Okay.
right after freshman year. I think I ended up taking a break. So I was like, give me a year and just let me see how it works.
So you sort of went like it was like the dogman route without deciding to just like, you know, fail out essentially. Like
Yeah,
you took a
yeah.
year. You took a
I took a
year.
year off. Like I basically like yeah, I finished freshman year, and then after that, I was like, I'd like to take a year just to see if I could do this because I felt super confident around season 2 of how good I was. I was kind of like I'm kind of nasty at this game. Like I want to give it a shot.
Oh, okay. And so from Pixel, so Pixel Juju is sort of like your first experience as a player, and I'm assuming that got four. And then you made that team. You're playing in early 2016,
Hmm.
and that moves into like Cat 5, which then
Cat 5.
slowly becomes a little bit later than it transitioned to Envision. So what was the transition, as a player? Because when you first start out as an amateur, you're sort of just like grouping up with people that you sort of know, or maybe it's on a random Discord call. Like, how did you get to Cat 5 from Pixel Juju, at this time obviously still a DPS player, and then go to Envision? Like, how did that process go for you when you're like starting out as a player?
Pixel Juju, it's tough, especially when you're not familiar with esports and like playing on teams. Pixel Juju was a team of friends. Like I said, I was on a team with Reprise, and I think it came to a point where I knew I was better than them, and
Wow.
I ended up leaving Pixel Juju because I forgot who I messaged. I think it was Coffee, because Coffee was like the head guy of Cat 5 at the time, and I ended up shooting him a message and asked for a tryout. And I think once I realized that other teams were interested in how good I was, that's kind of when I moved from, taking it less serious to like, oh, I can actually do this.
Okay, so it was just sort of like when you reached out after playing a bit and people were like, okay, you're pretty good. Then it transitioned to that, like, okay, I need to take a year off. I need to play. I think I can make something from this. And then it sort of snowballed from there. Because for Cat 5, I don't think you were on Cat 5 that long, right, before you went to Envision?
No, Cat 5 didn't last very long because I think everyone was sort of in the situation where they needed to start making money, and Cat 5, was unsponsored, just random team. And I think everybody was looking to get to the salary positions as soon as possible, so the team kind of disbanded. It was weird because the team like disbanded, but also like most of them ended up on Envision anyway, so it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of that flow. I mean, that's how we felt. I mean, it was different for my situation, but you generally often try to keep the same players around you back then. Like, you'd prefer to move together, and I talked about this with Blase in our last episode. It's like players, especially pre-Overwatch League, and even during Overwatch League, if they can get away with it, like to move in like schools. Like, they like to be together in groups. So when you were moving from Cat 5 to Envision, because like everyone was looking for money at this point. This is in 2017. There was like the dead zone of Overwatch, as we called it, because like it was pretty dead for a while. There wasn't like a lot of tournaments happening. How did you push those players from Cat 5 to Envision? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them?
What happened originally was I think Coffee and Fozix ended up going to Envision first. I'm not sure the circumstances of how that happened, but those two made it first. And I basically just begged Coffee. I mean, I don't beg very often.
You fell to your knees and just
but,
like.
But
please.
I definitely got on my hands and knees. Like, you're getting paid, and we're on the same team. Like, please just give me a shot. And I forgot who I ended up replacing. It might have been Teenage.
Teenage. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
But I think I replaced Teenage at the time.
Really, Teenage. That's a very because wasn't Teenage at one point on Selfless as well?
Selfless, I think. Yeah. So I ended up replacing Teenage, and I don't remember the circumstance of how I was joined, but I remember we had the trial for the Flex DPS spot, and then it was between Darksma and KSF. My teammate now, KSF, and we ended up picking Darksma.
Get fucked, Kyle.
Hindsight is, not the best choice, but I think that's what ended up happening. And then, what was that original 6? The original 6 was me, Coffee, Darksma. Oh man,
this was before because this is also before. Yeah, you had Fozix.
Caliburn, the 30 FPS Lucio god,
legend of the game, Caliburn.
And we had Ned from NG Red.
So then this at this point you've swapped over. You begged Coffee this tryout to Envision because you needed money, and it's the 2017 like dead zone. Everyone's trying to get in. You get in, and you're with Envision for a long time. Like all the way through 2018. Season 0 contenders, like through season 0 contenders, and you definitely had the highs and lows, right? Like when you get to a team and you're playing against, because also during that time you're playing against all those established rosters. There's like C9, there was FaZe, us at one point. Then obviously Envy when they returned to the States, and Rogue and stuff when they came to the States. How was that? Did you feel like when you make that gap, that transitional gap from like you're a semi-professional, like, or an unpaid and amateur going to that professional play for the first time, did you feel the intensity and like the pressure ramp up a lot more for you?
Oh, big time. I think one big example is playing Selfless. I mean, when you play Selfless first time, you think you're pretty good, and then Selfless just puts you in the dirt, and your ego goes all the way back down to like a normal level, if not worse.
Well, it wasn't even just them putting you into the dirt too. It was the fact that like it was like grasping at like mist. Like you would chase DeFran or you would chase Emong, and they would just run away from you, and then they'd come back and they'd roll you, and it was just like it was impossible to play against that team at the time.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about when we first were on Envision was gaining respect because absolutely nobody thought we deserved to get paid because Envision kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't exactly a predetermined org. It wasn't a method. It wasn't I don't really have an example. It was, a well-known org like before. So a lot
CLG
of
stuff
people
like
made
that.
fun of us for making 1,500 because they didn't think we deserve it. So just gaining the respect, I think, was the hardest part for the community.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be real with you. I think I definitely made fun of you in the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
be
mean,
real.
everybody did. Everybody did.
I definitely did not respect your team in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you weren't, and you guys weren't that good for a while. But then you definitely got a lot better as it went on, because also you make roster changes. And you guys got a lot better, and then it sort of like peaked. I think in like 2018 Contenders, right?
Yeah.
You guys started being actually pretty good. You started beating like really good teams. I think at this point you had Jaru, correct, and you had Fire, and
It was
you were
me.
then swapped to Offtank at that point too.
Yeah. No, I still think I was DPS
Were you
first
still
season of
DPS?
Contenders. Yeah, I was still DPS.
Wow.
I didn't end up swapping until that season of Contenders after that.
And what do you think like prompted that swap for you? Because you were a DPS player for a long time. Why swap from DPS to Offtank?
What ended up happening is we played our season of Contenders and we did all right at LAN. We took the map of FaZe and we lost. And then we played APAC, and I think after APAC we ended up bombing out really hard. And I think everyone knew the team we were going to make roster changes. So we ended up cutting Cini and Fozix at the time, and Cini was kind of like we never really had like a set off tank. I think what we ended up doing a lot was having players rotate like the Tracer and Diva a lot depending on the map. So at that point we're like, all right, we need like an established off tank, and we looked at the off tank market and we were like, what the fuck? Everyone sucks. And I was like, I want to try it. Just give me a try. Like I've been feeling it before. That I kind of wanted to try switching to the Diva, and just gave it a shot, and it felt natural, so we stuck with it.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot of like fluctuation at the time with roles, and the off tank was one of it was like the off tank and main support both were roles that like there wasn't a lot of talent there, and so people would be forced to swap over. I mean, that's literally the whole story of like Harry Hook, of like so many people that are just like, no one wants to play Lucio, no one wants to play off tank, so like I'm gonna do it. And so did you feel you were in a very similar, and it was a very similar situation for you guys and how you felt? And do you think that was like a role that was forced on you, or you were really just the one that was like, yeah, I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna be really good at it?
I don't think it was forced. Like I said before, like I ended up messaging Jaro a lot, and I was like, even before, I kind of wanted to try it. I was like, I kind of want to try playing Diva like the months before. So it was something I naturally felt like I was gonna slot into anyways. So once the opportunity presented itself, it was a no-brainer for me.
Okay. Well, there's like this sort of, we have your timeline of Envision and you guys making roster changes and then your swap and your entry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the real juicy stuff, in my opinion, is when it starts happening from post Envision, or from Envision to then you go to Envy. You go to Envy, who sets up their academy team for Fuel, obviously. And this was, and during which time period, and it was right after, I believe, which season did this happen? Season 2018, season 3 or something like that, I believe?
Yeah, they ended up changing the name to like, they restarted at season 1 or something ridiculous. I don't remember. They change the season names all the time, but yeah, it was after, it's like season 3 is what it would technically be.
And why? And so it's still to this day, I think it's a little unclear exactly, because also a lot of at the end of 2018, a lot of the Envision players people were expecting to be in Overwatch League. Like Jaru was on the list. I think was Crimzo with you guys at that time, right?
No, Crimzo was not.
No, it wasn't Crimzo. Who was it? It was Fozix
coming in later. It might have been after APAC. It was a long time because I remember for a long time we didn't have a flex support because the gap between APAC and when next season the Contender started, it was a gap, but it went from Fozix to Crimzo. I don't remember if he was in that window, but Crimzo was definitely on Envision at some point. So yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, I think it was, but it's still either way. There was a Jaru. We had yourself. There was the Numlocked played for you. And so a lot of people looked at this roster and were like, okay, we expect some to be in Overwatch League in the 2019 season. Mm-hmm. But then there just wasn't anyone there. Like, no one moved up. And there was, like, rumor circulating of, like, you guys weren't allowed to try out. Is that, like, fact? Were you guys actually not allowed to try out?
100% accurate. What ended up happening is we played the Contender season, and then we ended up getting a decent amount of offers to try out. Like I think I had the standard I think Boston let everybody try out like as per usual. And I've been having Boston and Philly, and they both messaged me, and both of them I went to my owner. I was like, can I try out at least? Like, even if they offer me a spot, you say no, like, whatever. I at least want to try out and get my name out there. And he's like, no. Just straight up said no. And I think at the time, I don't think there was anything he could have done to stop us, but just the threat of him saying no and, like, I'll cut your money was enough for us not to do the tryouts.
So what was the rationale behind that? Because, like, there's always been wacky stories floating around behind the Envision owner. Artur is his name, right? Artur or whatever.
Artur.
Yeah. Why was there a rationale ever delivered for why no tryouts were allowed? Because you guys apparently, I think at the time you were paid pretty decently, but like, was that the reasoning, or what exactly was it?
The reasoning was he thought he was gonna get an Overwatch League spot. I don't know why he thought. I don't know why he thought he was gonna get an Overwatch League spot, but he was confident. I remember multiple times he ended up talking to us and said he was talking to the Denial guy, trying to get him and the Denial guy to work together. And
Denial and Envision together. Oh,
Denial and Envision.
What a power couple.
The perfect duo.
My goodness, absolutely.
Yeah, so he tried to like make it swallowable for us, but every time we were so pissed. Like, even before this, we got paid late every month, and this is like at a time where I could barely afford to eat, and I was living off ramen every single day of the week. So anytime I didn't get paid, and then I was helping my parents pay the bills as well. So when I didn't get paid, my mom's rent got paid late. So, every month I couldn't end up paying for rent. Couldn't eat. So there'd be times where we didn't get paid for 90 days after we were supposed to get paid.
Wow. And the crazy part too is that it wasn't even like, especially during that time, it was changing in 2018 to like going to 2019, but like it wasn't even that uncommon for like orgs to do that to players like all the time, which is the crazy part. But the crazier part, I think, with that, and it's not like your story is necessarily like insanely unique in that, sure, I've heard similar instances, but it's just is that he also thought he denied you the tryouts while thinking he's going to get the Overwatch League spot until eventually like it comes to pass that that's obviously not going to happen. Was there like a breaking point, or how did you guys then officially go from like when Envision announcing we're done with Overwatch to Envy? Like was there like a process there where Artur came to you and was like, we're dropping Envision, and you knew, and then you went to Envy, or did Envy approach you, or exactly how did that process work out?
I don't remember what it was, the straw that broke the camel's back, but I remember doing like research because I think he did something that just sent me over the edge. I was so mad. And so I ended up going back to my DocuSign and looking at my contract. And I scrolled down and I realized the fucker never signed any of the contracts. So he never signed any of the contracts. We were getting paid on a contract that wasn't finished. And so I basically took that to my agent. I was like, this guy didn't sign the contracts. And I was like, do whatever you got to do to make this shit go away because I'm sick of being here. And a couple of days later, I don't know the reasonings. I don't know if he did it, but the contract ended up being voided. And as soon as the contract said void, I went straight to academy teams. Like no hesitation. I messaged Arrow. I messaged Arrow mostly, and I was like, hey, Arrow, you want an academy team? And he was like, 100%. I was like, all right, get it working because for some reason we're free. Like, and we were working with Blizzard at the time to make sure we got the contender slot and not him. So there was a lot of back and forth. Like that was a hectic week.
So so Envision was still planning to be in Overwatch at that point. Like when you were making the swap in early 2019 from Envision or whatever, they were still planning. They still wanted to own the slot. Were they actually planning to compete, or they just wanted to have the slot to sell? Which is some teams.
Yeah, I think they wanted to sell it. I know he wanted out at one point, but he was so far committed to paying us money and like having the slot that he didn't really have like an option.
Yeah.
So I think it ended up working out for him as well. Because he didn't want to lose any more money paying us, so it ended up working out well.
Yeah, I would say
obviously he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but not my problem.
But also pay your players. Don't stop them from trying out for Overwatch League teams. Very basic stuff.
He could have made money back by selling players.
That's the crazy part too about a lot of these orgs is that they were so restrictive with their players that. And like how they wanted them to make money off of them is that they actually lost money in the end. And Envision's a classic example of that because they could have sold players and made money and probably been okay.
For sure. Season 1, I think Numlock ended up making it Season 1 because he never signed the contract. He was never a part of Envision. He never signed the dotted line. So that happened to both of us actually. Christopher and Numlock were our two main tanks we ran with that season, and both of them were like, yeah, we're not signing that fucking contract. We were like, we understand. We get it. We get it.
Yeah, it's there was a lot of stories circulating. I mean, I've heard stories about Artur, like he messaged a bunch of the Overwatch League talent members at the time because they have like a group chat, all the talent members and stuff, and he like sent a message to him. He's like, guys, like I'm gonna make it, because he wanted to go make a new game, right? It was like some other game that he wanted to make, and he was like, it's gonna be bigger than Overwatch. It's gonna be bigger than Overwatch League. It's gonna be the best. Like, I'm gonna have all you guys in there. You're all gonna be making like $1 million a year, and everyone's like, okay, Arthur, like whatever. Like it
The
was
Forge
just weird.
Arena.
Yeah,
Everyone right now, go type in the Forge Arena and go look at some gameplay and tell me what you think about it.
I don't know. Did it ever get developed even?
I mean, it was definitely a point where like people could play the game.
Okay. Well, it
Forge
was
Arena.
it was a classic moment. So then I guess we have that whole mess with Envision where you've moved over, you voided the contracts, you got denied trying out for Overwatch League, which is also pretty disastrous, because
That
having
sucks.
your window to not make Overwatch League is so bad as a player.
Yep.
And so you move into Envy. At this point, are you feeling hopeful again, or are you feeling like jilted, like, oh fuck, I can't believe we didn't get our chance to try for Overwatch League when I had my shot? Or are you thinking like, okay, it's good, Envy's gonna take care of us, we're gonna be good from here?
I think once I was on Envy, I felt good. Obviously, I think I've gotten over the point. Like it was a pretty long time after the whole tryout shenanigans went down. So I felt good going into Envy. It was an org that wanted us there. I wanted to be on the org. They were paying us just as much as we were on Envision. So it's not like we were losing anything. We were just gaining infrastructure and the ability to practice with the Overwatch League team. And I knew Arrow liked me before. How I felt like when I was on Envy was my chance to get promoted. I thought like this is the perfect scenario for me to be the next Dallas Fuel Offtank. So I felt really, really optimistic when Envy first started.
Okay, and so I think you guys also did end up having a pretty good season, right? That one season, because you played one season for Envy and Contenders, right? Because you get signed February 22nd to Mayhem in the 2019 season, which is like right before, or right, yeah, it was pretty much right before or just right when the season started around there. I believe. I don't think that was before Stage 1, right? Because that was back when the season started in January, correct? So,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so you get.
I played 2 seasons, I think.
I
played season 2 in 2018. And
that's
season
right.
3.
You had in 2018 season 3. That's right, because I remember we had that conversation when you were moving over to Envy, going to the World Cup for 2018. When we were in the back of the car going to the Gladiator house. Yeah, I do remember that. So 2018 season 3, and then 2019 season 1, and so then you go to Mayhem.
Yep.
And this is a whole nother chapter in the McGravy saga.
It is.
It's the Florida Mayhem, and one that's a little bit fresher. But so you get signed to Mayhem. At this time, they just had a disastrous season, season 1, and Mineral leaves. They add as assistant coach. They have S&T, that awesome guy that gets moved to the coaching role while technically being a player at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I think they're looking to go. I think they were looking to go mixed, or was it full Western at the time when they signed you? Like, what was the direction of the roster when you got signed early 2019?
I don't even think Mayhem themselves knew. I think the idea was I was going to be like the cornerstone piece that changed the team to like a mixed Western roster, but it like got caught in transition. So like I got signed, but nobody else really got signed. But I know at the time, they wanted to pick up Crimzo. If they were going to pick up another player, they were going to pick up Crimzo. And the other player, they were interested in Trill. That's the only 2 players I knew they were interested in. But that was like when I got signed, because me and Crimzo tried out together. And I'm not sure the reason why they didn't pick up Crimzo at the time, but I remember them telling me that they really like Crimzo.
Okay. Yeah, so then they're not sure of their roster direction. They're looking at Western players. I think they had already obviously signed a couple Korean players at that point. Because they had Saya player, they had awesome guy who they got moved to a coach, but also a substitute player at the time. BQB, yeah,
Swan, Zephyr,
all of those guys.
Yeah,
and so you head into the season not knowing the direction. Your head coach at the time is Insight, I believe, right? I think
it was still Mineral.
It was still Mineral, but then Mineral leaves and Insight comes in. So, and it doesn't start well for the Florida Mayhem in the 2019. Was it, do you think, the lack of direction? Was it like a coaching issue where you didn't know how you wanted to play? Was it just the rosters being swapped? How was that environment, and what exactly was happening for you guys?
I couldn't even put my finger on one thing and say this was the problem. I think everything was the problem. I think the players weren't good enough. I think the coaching wasn't good enough. Like the players, nobody fundamentally did not understand GOATs. And so I'm coming from like North American Contenders where GOATs play is not bad. It's not bad. Like GOATs play was definitely like we were getting to a point where it was actually pretty good. And so I come in like trying to teach 6 people how to play GOATs and nobody's helping me. It's like it was impossible. And the team, the assistant coach, ended up making the team he kind of like took over in a sense. Like he ended up making the team more of like a Korean style coaching. And so our day would start at 10 a.m. and it would end at 11, and we would review for like 6 hours a day. It was unreal. So me and Apply would get done with scrims, and then we turn around and watch the VOD review, and it'd be in Korean, and we'd understand like maybe like 10% of it, and we just sit there all night and just lose our minds slowly.
So they were still splitting playtime, right? It was a mixed roster at the time between the Western and the Korean players, and so they obviously didn't know the direction. So there wasn't like an easily digestible like coaching solution for you guys. Was it much more marketed towards that Korean style? You said like it was all marketed towards them, and you guys were sort of expected to pick up the pieces and to learn along, or was it like the opposite of said thing?
I don't know what their expectations were. The only thing that saved me and Apply was they had a manager called MDS, David, and I think he's like the official team manager now for the team, and he's a really good translator. And he was super, super nice. He knew like our situation. He knew how fucked it was, so he was helping us every step of the way. So if David wasn't there, I don't even think I could have played. Like it was so frustrating not be able to understand anything that was being said, and nobody was even attempting to make an effort, to help me to Apply. So David was a saint.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I mean, a lot of teams I felt like have not prioritized like having that, but this is like the inverse problem. I think some teams have had where some teams have had the issue where they bring in Korean players and they don't integrate them in the right way. They don't get translators. They don't get the necessary resources to help them be the best players they can be. And this is like the inverse where they brought in all these Korean players and staff, and they still have a mixed roster with Western players that obviously aren't speaking Korean. And you guys just have no resources, and you're trying to figure out what the hell is even happening. It's the inverse problem that a lot of teams have had.
It was brutal. Very, very brutal, for sure.
Oh, my God. Well, and then we move to the continuing Mayhem saga. So I've always told there was like a struggle, right, between like they didn't know if they wanted to go Western or Korean. Barehands at the time was the assistant GM. I don't even know who the main GM was. It Matt? I think technically Matt Ackerman.
Matt Ackerman. I like Matt. That's cool.
And then obviously, hadn't been promoted to GM yet. So there was like that struggle between Western and Korean, and you guys were doing really badly throughout the season. Clearly, you talked about how the resources weren't there for you guys to be integrated. No one had any idea what was happening from the staff to the players, which is crucial in Goats. When was the decision made, and how was it relayed to you that we're swapping to the full Korean roster? Because Mayhem did make that announcement. I believe it was like. It was I think it was
April?
around April-ish. Yes, it was in April.
It was 5th. Like start of April.
April 5th. They said that we're going full Korean now. We pretty much wish the best to our Western players. Like, how was that relayed to you? Was your input put in there? Like, what was the process like for that?
Yeah, see, the process for me was weird because the understanding that I had was the team was going to go Western, and that was the idea that almost everybody had.
Okay. So the opposite was told you before.
The opposite was told to me before. So basically, I was talking to Matt because Matt, is the GM. So I figured, Matt's like the head honcho, right? He gets to make all the decisions. He was like, yeah, like, talk to me about Crimson and Chill. So I did. I talked up Crimson and Chill, and he was like, we're going to do our best, to try and get him. And it was almost to a point where they were pretty close to offering contracts. I don't remember the exact details, but it was at that point. So we ended up going to a Florida trip where we go to the fans. We went to a Magic game. We did all that, the meet and greets, whatnot. And right after we got back from the Florida trip, they got us to the office and they sat us down. And from the moment that I sat down and I heard the words, we're going full Korean, I fully expected him to say the word Western instead of Korean. And so he said the word Korean and my mind just shut off. I was like, huh? Can you say that again? So I'm sitting in that room. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? And I was out of it. I was out of it for the next hour. And then right after that talk, they ended up taking me to Vic and Apply to another room to talk about it. And it was Albert and Barehands. Mm-hmm. And this is where it gets juicy.
Oh.
So they sat us down and they were talking about like, okay, I know it's maybe a little bit surprised, but we're going full Korean. And then Albert was being super understanding, trying to help us through it out of nowhere. And he was like, all right, Albert's like, we're going to give you that decision. The Koreans aren't going to get here until like stage 3. So you guys can play all of stage 2 if you want. No big deal. We'll let you play and get your time in. Or you can not play, no hard feelings. And we all looked at each other and were like, we don't want to fucking play for you guys. What the? Of course we're not going to play. And as soon as that comes out, Barehands comes out of fucking left field with, hey, that's breach of contract, man. You can't be doing that. You have to play if we say so. And we were like, didn't you just give us the option not to play, and now you're threatening to breach a contract on us? What the fuck is wrong with you? And that entire time, Bare Hands was super, super aggro the entire time. And so I just came out of that room just feeling so jaded. Like, I'm getting cut from my team. One of my assistant GMs is basically threatening me to my face. It was just a mess. I couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't believe that was my first OWL experience, and that I was like, my OWL experience is coming to a close, and this is it. This is what playing an Overwatch League is like. This is fucked. I don't want any part of this anymore.
Oh my god. So you have these conflicting messages the entire time, and then eventually, and then you have conflicting messages within the own staff, even like you're saying, because not only does the staff believe that they're going to go Western, but then you're told a Korean, and then one staff member is saying, okay, guys, we know it's shitty. We'll work it out. You guys don't have to play if you don't want to, or you can. And then we have another staff member that's saying, and other groups that are being like, no, fuck you, you're gonna play, even though we're cutting you no matter what, and you're done. And despite what the messages were, so it's just like huge like mix of just like what the fuck is happening in this roster.
It was frustrating because Matt the GM, like, he should have been the guy making the decision, right? Like, they ended up going and talking to Ben Spoon and John, who are the president and the owner and stuff, and the CEO, and they were talking to them. And I think the story was, that's what they told me, was that Bare Hands went behind everyone's back when everyone was on vacation, because we went to the Florida trip and everyone took their time off afterwards, right? So like, Albert was on vacation before the decision was happened, and Matt was off doing the Florida thing. So while they were busy, he snaked behind everyone's back and got the team to go full Korean. So leading into the Florida trip, I was talking to Matt about the Western team, making the Western team at Florida a couple days before the decision. So I was like I said, I was genuinely so shocked when they said Korean, because I was talking to the GM about making a Western roster. So I was like, oh yeah, dude, I know so many good players I could bring in. Like, don't worry, I like, if you like help me and like let me build out a team, I can make you at least this year like a middle of the pack team.
Jesus Christ. Well, that's that's a mess. That's a mess.
Yeah.
And during this point, at any point, did you feel like, because also sometimes it's a secret that, it's not really a secret, but it's something that happens. Is like, did you ever feel that the management with what they're doing, was it dividing you guys, the remaining Western players, apply you to Veek from the Korean players and the staff? Or did you feel still very unified and they were also like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what's going on with the Western guys? Or did you feel that split was also strengthening during this time because of the management decisions?
That's tough to say. I think there was a couple Koreans that were definitely, I was pretty cool with. I think BQB, Saya were both really understanding, really cool to talk to. Chris was good to an extent. Swan. But everybody else, I think Zephyr and Hago were the two biggest outliers that wanted nothing to do with this. But I think for the most part, the Korean players were concerned for us. Like, once they heard it, like, they tried to talk to me about it, like, a little bit, obviously as much as they could. But it wasn't like the entire team was like anti-Western and they all wanted to stick together. Like, it wasn't anything like that as far as I know.
Okay, well it was just something that, because it's not so much that like I think that I'm proposing that the Korean players were anti-Western or something. It's just when you have a clear organizational goal, it can sometimes just drive a split between groups that's unintentional. Yep. It's not even intended to cause that, but from the sounds of it right there, it sounds like you guys are perfectly fine, and everyone and the Korean players themselves are also just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, now we have the Mayhem sort of put a handle on, your chapter at the Mayhem.
It was a short, but felt like an eternity of a chapter for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, it's so rough as a rookie player, like, because you mentioned how this is your first season in Overwatch League, this entire saga. After you already not that long ago dealt with the Envision to Envy shit, like, as a rookie, it had, like you said, it had to have felt like, is this Overwatch League? Is this what it's always going to be like?
And I was playing well. Like,
yeah, you were playing pretty well. You didn't.
I was at like when I was coming up from Envy, I was at like the peak of learning goats in my opinion. Like, I was finally starting to get like a grip of like how to play D.Va, and I was like trying to teach it to everybody else. But I genuinely felt like, even though we got rolled all the time, my fundamentals and how I was playing was really good. So it was really disappointing because I was finally getting my chance. I popped off the first game and I was like, oh my god, McGravy's nuts. He ate like 20 grabs, whatever it was. And then after that, it's just silence because I just got screwed by the fact that I was on Florida Mayhem.
And did you talk during this time at any point? Were you talking with other players or staff? Obviously, you don't have to name names necessarily, and just seeing their opinions and getting their feelings on their teams. And were they all also like, what the fuck is happening? Or this like almost felt like not necessarily a common Overwatch League occurrence, but like this sort of crazy shit in the management, divergence in management, was that felt as almost like a theme for the entire league, or were you feeling like very much like an outlier at the time?
Yeah, I talked to a couple players, and they said that, like, obviously the grass isn't always greener, but they were like, dude, your situation's fucked. I've heard of nothing like that. Like, it's not amazing over here, but the Mayhem's, like, they were like, I generally don't understand how it's happening to you over there. Like, I didn't talk to a lot of out players because I didn't have the connections to talk to a lot of people at the time, but I ended up talking to, like, people I knew from Envy and a couple other people. I don't remember specifically, but I remember talking to people and being like, is it anything like that on other teams? Because I can't be told that I'm just getting screwed because I joined, the worst team in the league. I'm like, nah, you're just getting screwed.
And it's weird too because I feel like this is definitely just a very self-contained Mayhem problem, because I've heard great things about Mayhem Academy, like as an organization. Someone that lived with Fact Fiction, when he was on that team, like I heard they seemed to support the players extremely well. They were very generous with their pay and the apartments and such. And also speaking to like Ben Spoot and even Matt, because at one point I tried out for Mayhem early 2018 to 2019, obviously before I made my swap. It never felt that the organization was ever trying to be intentionally malicious or lead people wrong. It just felt like a weird. It just feels out of character. Did you get that same impression from them? It just seemed like it was certain parties.
Yeah, it felt like the power struggle of like the Korean versus Western that like leaked into the management. I think Matt had the right intentions, but he didn't have the power or the grip to like sort of lead the team into the right direction. So like, the GM, so I would like not say was in flux, like not that he didn't have control, but like he could be swayed, or like people could go behind his back and sway, the higher ups, right? So it was just constantly a power struggle. And you say Florida Mayhem was good, and I think Florida Mayhem was good because it was something Bare Hands didn't fucking touch. Bare Hands had nothing to do with Florida Mayhem.
Now by Florida Mayhem, you mean Mayhem Academy, right?
Mayhem Academy, right? Sorry,
Mayhem Academy. Okay.
Mayhem Academy. That was good because Bare Hands didn't touch it. It was Albert and it was Matt, and they brought him the pay. They gave him the apartments. They gave him the computers. They were the ones that built up Mayhem Academy, and Bare Hands had nothing to do with it.
Whew, those are some picante words, Mr.
Oh, there's a reason why he doesn't have a job in Overwatch League anymore.
Oh my, this is like, but I mean, it is interesting to say, like, because you get very different perspectives all the time, and hearing from the player perspective, it definitely feels like it's being pinned on one person. I wonder if there was ever more sides to that story that we obviously haven't heard.
There could be more. There could be more people that, but from my perspective and what I was told within the org, Bare Hands. That's basically the TLDR of the Florida Mayhem towards the end of the season.
Well, so Mayhem Academy, we've wrapped it up. We put a nice little bow, a nice little shit bow on the shit package there for Mayhem. And so we've shipped it off. And so now we transition again from Mayhem to Valiant. Mm-hmm. And you got traded to Valiant, I believe, stage 3, right?
Stage 2.
Stage 2?
I think it was stage 2.
I'm looking at the timeline here. So it says that you get traded. Oh yeah, because you go with Shax and Fact for Mayhem Academy, for Fate on May 10th, which I believe is stage 2-ish. So this happens. How is that? Because already, like, you yourself has said that you're not playing for this team. You don't want to play for this team, like, regardless of what other parties said. How does that get related to that you are being traded, and why? And what exactly was the interest? Like, did you do tryouts with Valiant, or they just say, McGravy, we want you. We think you're good.
Yeah, basically it was after the meeting. I told them like, hey, I want nothing to do with you guys. Like, this is ridiculous. I want out. Like, if you can trade me, please trade me. It was simple as that. And so it's basically just a waiting. Like, I waited for about a month and a half where I wasn't doing anything between April and May. And I don't remember what it was, but I think I was just sitting on the balcony talking to somebody, and Albert walked in. He's like, hey, you want to get traded to Valiant? And I looked at him and went, hey, yeah, that sounds nice. He said, okay. I didn't have to do any tryouts. There's no tryouts. And I think that's largely in part to the fact that Packing 10 was the head coach, and I've known Packing 10 for a really long time. I didn't mention it earlier, but Packing 10 was my head coach on Envision for a good chunk of time. Maybe for about a year, a little less than a year. But so I think that's a big part of why I didn't have to try out, was the fact that Packing was there.
And this is during the middle of when Valiant was also doing extremely terribly last season, correct?
Yes.
So they were really struggling as well. And they were still also a primary. There was like their old roster from season 1. They still had, I believe, Envy. I think at that time, Envy, Fate got traded. Izzyaki.
Was Envy there? I don't think Envy was there.
Was Envy gone? But no, it was Space. Space was playing at that point.
It was Space, Izzyaki, Fate. God, Kuki was on the roster.
And then Kuki
I saw him for like a week.
Yes, obviously leaves. And so you guys go to a struggling Valiant. You guys being McGravy, Shax, and Fact Fiction, and then Mayhem get Fate. And so you didn't have any tryouts because you knew Packington, and Packington is okay. This is what we need. As a player, were you feeling? Because also when you were going to Valiant, you had to think about the fact that you were going to the team that had Space OW, the legend himself, the absolute clout king. Like, how did that feel? Like, yeah, I'm traded, but now I'm going to be benched for Space.
Yep. I knew going into it. It was like how I saw it from Mayhem was I could get dropped from Mayhem and get my contract money and go back to Contenders. But I had absolutely zero intention of going back to Contenders. I was like, I had finally dug myself out of the hole. I prefer not to go back in there if I can.
Mm-hmm.
So I agreed to do the trade, and I knew going into it that I was more than likely never going to play a map for the Valiant. Regardless of how good I was in GOATs, because I thought at the time I thought I was better. Genuinely, like, I thought I was better and I thought I could have played, but with how the Valiant season was, I completely understand why they couldn't even attempt to play me, because they went 0-7 the first stage. They had no time to like experiment with stuff and try out new things. They had to immediately start winning. So I accepted it going into it. I think a big clip off my channel is asking if I'm ever going to play it. I'm like, of course not. Of course I'm not going to play. Do I want to play? Of course. But I knew the reality of my situation going into it.
So you had just accepted the fact that more than likely Space was going to get played. Was it also communicated to you that way when you went there that, yeah, we like you, McGravy, but Space just has to play?
I think those words that didn't need to be said. Nobody outright said that, but I think everybody was
they
thinking
just knew it.
You know what I mean? I think everybody knew it going into it. Like, I didn't think it had to be said.
Okay. So a pretty gracious entry, though. It's like, it's kind of just the bumps. It's like you've gone from a really bad situation to another team in a bad situation to now guaranteeing you won't get playtime, pretty much. An unsaid agreement that you won't get playtime. And your thoughts are just, okay, I'm going to go back to Contenders after this. I'm going to get my money. My rep hopefully won't be ruined. And I go back to Contenders afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But then into season comes.
Yep.
And big changes are on the horizon for the Valiant, because now it gets announced that they're swapping up their roster drastically, and now you are the main tank. Space is gone. You're there.
Yep.
Was there for the process of someone that was there at the time and also worrying for their job? Was there really anything that was ever communicated to Valiant directly about, like, this is the direction we're going? Was there like a clear direction for them, or is it just how it worked out? Like, one day Valiant comes to you and is like, hey, McGravy, you're starting. Like, did you have to try out for the spot? Like, what exactly was communicated to you as Valiant made that swap and all those players moved away?
I knew absolutely nothing. I genuinely knew nothing. Towards the end of the season, I thought they wouldn't scrap the whole roster. So I think what I was telling them was, I realized that I hadn't played Overwatch in about 8 months at this point, or 7 or 8 months, or something ridiculous. I hadn't scrimmed in that long. So I realized my stock was plummeting. My stock was plummeting, so I needed to do something to level it off. And I think what I ended up telling him was, even if Space is there, I'd like to be there to be like the third tank or the backup or play the weird stuff. Like, I'll do anything to make sure I stay on the Valiant, because I genuinely enjoyed being on the Valiant, even though I didn't play. But as the season went on, I started hearing rumors that Space was getting traded. I was like, Space getting traded? What? That makes absolutely no sense. And it ended up happening, and I had to do tryouts just like everybody else. So I ended up doing I didn't do the open trials, but I did like when they did like the condensed trials, and they like got like the quote unquote better players they wanted to try out. And I did my tryouts over a couple of weeks and made it to the final 2, and I had to learn Sigma during tryouts.
Yeah.
Granted you.
Well, I mean, to be fair, didn't most players at the time, right? Because D.Va was played all the way through season 2 up until, right? Because was Sigma being played at that point in stage 4 season 2?
No,
I don't think it was, right?
No, because at the end of the year, towards playoffs, they were playing Sigma. Sigma was being played.
Right,
there was a lot of players in those trials that had Sigma experience, and I didn't. My experience was, okay, I have like 4 days for tryouts. I need to play Sigma for like 14 hours a day and just learn how the hero works. So I had to learn a new hero while trying out, and I made it. For me, at the time, I didn't even know how. I had absolutely, like, I didn't want to say I had zero confidence, but I wasn't exactly confident in my situation.
Do you think your attitude helped you a lot in that? Like, you've talked about how you accepted your situation going into Valiant, how you assumed you're probably going to get benched, and then you went to packing at the end of it and said, like, I'll do whatever it fucking takes, to be on this squad, and I'll play whatever. Do you think that attitude carried you in terms of your adaptability to Sigma and going into tryouts, and also probably how the staff perceived you. Because something that's talked about is like attitude for players is very important, and coaches value player attitude a lot, or at least good coaches do.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that attitude helped you at all during that, in both adapting and also the how you were perceived through the Valiant, or is that just secondary to the whole thing? It didn't really matter.
Oh, 100% it helped me. I don't think I would be on the team if Packin and Reprise didn't vouch for me, genuinely. Because I know those are the, two coaches that I've known for a really long time, and they know who I am. They know, like, I'll do anything it takes to win, and I'll do anything to help lead a team. And I've always had the right attitude to, keep a team together. I'm like an emotional leader of sorts. And so they vouched for me in that sense. Because I think if it was just purely on a mechanical standpoint, I don't think I would have made it. I didn't play all that great. I played all right. But I think what really stood me apart was the fact that my communication is really good. I help lead a team. I've got a good attitude. And that's my advice for like any player who wants to make a team is you could be the best mechanical player. It just does not matter. You have to be able to comm. You have to be able to be a good team player. You have to be able to scrim day in and day out and give 100%. And I think that's the deciding factor that ended up helping me get back on the team and start.
So that what ties into that too, when we talk about the tryouts, is that there was also rumors circulating that Valiant had gone quote unquote budget.
Mm-hmm.
Was that ever communicated to you during the process, or is it just a normal day's business? Like no one came to you and be like, by the way, McGravy, you're here because you're cheap. Like no one was like, was there anything that was really indicated that you guys were going cheap, or is it just we're doing business as usual, Packing's running the tryouts, and this is just how the direction's going? Like there was nothing to say like you're here because you're cheap necessarily.
Mm-hmm. In a way, it was indicated that they were going cheap. Like I understood. Like I have a good relationship with Mike, the GM, RTG, and he's very open with everybody. He's just gonna tell you how it is. He's like, we don't have as much money as we used to. You're not gonna get paid a lot to make the team. And I was like, I understand. Like I don't think anybody who's doing the tryouts was in it for the money. So like, it was indicated they were cheap, but at the same time, Packing did his absolute best and all the other coaches to make sure it was business as usual. So it didn't really affect anything with the mindset of anybody really.
So you would say that actually was something that mattered to them going when they were building this roster, was like a budgetary angle. You would say that
100%.
was the case? Oh, it was 100%.
100%.
Oh, okay. Well, it is what it is, the economics of it.
Yep.
So, and I think, like you said, Packing's made the most of it. If that is definitely the case. You guys definitely outperformed my expectations, outperformed everyone's expectations.
Everybody's expectations.
And Packing has made sure to tell me. And I've myself have said that I think Packing, but we'll see as the season progresses, right? You guys haven't played in a very long time, since the season has started, obviously because all the COVID things like that. And I think when we're talking so much about Packing right now, what do you think of Packing? So you said you had a long relationship with Packing for a long time. How was it different to be under Packing and the coaching staff he built for Valiant compared to Mayhem or your other previous teams? Like, what was your experience like that?
All the other teams, it just pales in comparison because Packing is absolutely a no bullshit guy. Like nothing that he finds out of the ordinary or unacceptable is gonna fly. He just won't let it fly. And I think there's so many head coaches, there's so many teams where if something's like, not a big deal, we'll just slip. Like unless it's like really big, we won't do anything about it. But Packing is just I don't want to say a stickler. Stickler kind of like a native condensation, but yeah, he's a stickler. Like he's like if even the smallest thing, if you're late by 2 minutes, he's gonna be mad at you. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So he brings that kind of that military style, no bullshit attitude, and I think that really transitions into the team. And then you have the coaches around him who kind of help him with the in-game stuff and take that kind of structure and help us learn with it.
So for Packing, we've had that discussion for a long time of like, and it was recently discussed on the show that I just premiered. It was that there's the very structured coaching organizational styles of certain teams, and there's like player driven ones, where it's a little bit more relaxed. It's not as corporate or like martial. So you would describe Packing as a little bit more structured generally. Do you think that is a good coaching style? Do you think that teams because also other teams have tried to mimic that coaching style and have not had a lot of success. In fact, it's like dampened morale. Do you think you have to have a certain type of coach and staff to be able to make that work? Is it objectively the best one? How do you think that affects your performance and as your team performance when people said that like this talent isn't that good? This talent shouldn't be able to be that good. Do you think that structure that they have implemented is definitely the best for you and the best in general?
I think you definitely have to have a specific set of coaches. I think what makes Valiant the work the best is the fact that you have Packen at the head, right? Who's got that really good military type leadership, really strict, and then the three coaches around him are also just as important to the fact that Packen's there. They all have to they have a really good relationship. The fact that Packen and the other three coaches can talk to each other, they're always arguing, they're always fighting over things, they're always making sure that everything that they tell us is right. They're always arguing, making sure that all four of those things, all of them agree on the same thing, and they bring it to us. And I think if even one of those coaches was different, the structure wouldn't work as well. So I think that's really important that you have the right coaches when you have a certain structure. I think that's what is important for us.
So you have to have that right staff, and the players need to have the right staff too, because there's a possibility you're saying that if they had the wrong staff members there and they tried the same style, that players would respond negatively. So they have to have the right staff to make it work.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, well, just another case for why coaching and coaches in general and staff are so important for Overwatch League. Still, I think something that is slowly catching up there, hopefully, with the rest of the league and how it goes. Well, moving on beyond packing the staff and how much you love them. So let's talk about this year in general. And, we've just now announced that the online matches are happening again after all this time for the COVID things. You guys are playing this weekend.
Yep.
You're playing Gladiators and Shock this weekend.
Yes, we are.
And also because they moved into the whole 3-region format now, where they have the Korean and Chinese teams playing in their region to reduce the ping. They have the Pacific and the Atlantic teams all trying to play in their regions to reduce ping, because this online is what needs to be done, right? Because otherwise there's no way to play matches. There's no way to play matches that are at all equal because of ping, right?
Yeah.
When you saw this schedule change, were you more elated that you got to play, or more holy shit, not only do I have to play online, but I have to play Shock and Gladiators and shit 5 times? What?
It was a little bit of both.
Both.
It was a little bit of both. I was really happy to come into it and I'm ready to start playing again, because we haven't played in a month and a half, 2 months, whatever it was when we played in Dallas. But then I took a look at the schedule and I was like, we have to play Shock three times out of 4 matches. This is ridiculous. We play I think the Pacific West is probably the best division in the game, and the fact that we have to play all these teams 3 or 4 times is this is gonna be hard. This month, it's gonna be stressful as all hell, because we're just constantly gonna be on the top of our game all the time. So I'm excited to play, but in the same vein, it's holy hell, we have to play the best teams so many times. How is this fair? You know what I mean?
So you felt like that definitely your strength of schedule has obviously increased than what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And do you think it has impacted any teams in a perhaps an unfair way, or do you think the fairness of it is just that sometimes you're going to get tough teams and you have to just be good? You just have to get good. Or do you think it's been unfair somewhat in the way that they've drawn the regions?
I think that's unfair, but what else can I do? You know what I mean? There's not really another option. So regardless, if it's unfair or not, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how we feel or what we say, because this is the only way we get to play games. Obviously it's unfair that we have to play Shock 4 times, and other teams can play Boston Uprising 4 times.
Yeah.
But
that's just life.
Unfair.
But
that's just
what
life.
Can you do?
It's just the hand we've been dealt, and we just have to roll with it.
Because I personally can't think of a better solution that makes ping equal myself. How would you propose that you guys play? Even if you played Boston across the country, it's 100 ping.
80, 90.
Yeah, how would you propose that teams in an online format even do that? Do you have a solution, or you're just yeah, this is it. This is the only way?
I don't think there is a solution. I think this is generally the only way. And like you said, you could play on 100 ping or whatever ping to play other teams, and then players can complain about that. Regardless of whatever format they choose or matches they choose, there's always going to be complaints.
Yeah, there's always going to be
this one just about strength of schedule.
42069 on Reddit.
This one just
whatever.
Yeah, this one's just about strength of schedule, and obviously it sucks. But like I said, it's the hand we've been dealt, and just gotta do our best to run with it and win as many games as we can.
Yeah, I think that's honestly the best attitude. It's unlucky, right? There's no one could have predicted that it would happen.
There's nothing we do about it. Yeah.
It's just it's what has to be done, or else.
Yep.
Or else everyone plays. Because even if you were to say let's put the center in the middle of the U.S., there's still the Chinese and Korean teams. No one's going to get to play them equally. Even if, in fact, if it's in the center of the U.S., their ping is even worse because they have neither coast they can go to.
Yep.
So, there's no so easy solution.
There's no winning. There's no winning for them. Blizzard did not have a winning option here.
Well, after all that, do you feel confident as a team? Not only just you had a pretty good showing to start out this season, but you haven't played since. You haven't played with hero pools. And now it's going to be online, which is a whole different ball game than being in a homestand filled with the opposing team or your team or your fans on a stage with low latency.
Yep.
Do you think that's going to be negatively affect you guys more, or is it going to positively affect you? Is it going to be like neutral? Do some teams get affected more than others because they've moved away from a stage format to an online, or is online just everyone just it's all equal, the great equalizer?
I think it's a mix of both. I think a big concern that we had maybe going into the year was how some players would perform on stage, and now that we don't have to worry about that anymore.
It's gone now.
It's gone. So that's something we have to worry about anymore. But in the same vein, some of us play better on stage. Like I think me and KSP are both prime examples of someone who played better on stage. And KSP plays naughty online, and the fact that he plays better on stage is insane. So obviously we lose that. Like I think it's a little bit of give and take. I think some people will play better when they get the chance to play on a stage and play in front of people, and some people just perform better when they don't have the pressure of playing in front of thousands of people.
But surely you think the culture of like because I've been talking to other coaches about this, is that the culture of playing matches now is entirely different, right? Because I don't know how you guys are gonna do it. You can tell me how shortly, but teams are now, we're not have to like gear up like, oh, we got like, not only do we have matches, we got to get on stage, we got to be ready, we got to set up. It's a whole different feeling, right? Walking onto the stage, not that I would know, and getting up there and performing in front of a crowd, but moving to an online matchup is that you're probably in your practice area, in your rooms. It's a whole different ball game in terms of like where you're actually playing and practicing. Won't you think that's going to affect your mindset that you'll have to get over, like the seriousness of it?
Yeah, it's tough because you have to when you come into the season, you have to get into the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to be playing in front of thousands of people. I have to I'm not going to have the proper warm-up sometimes. There's going to be hours where I don't get to play the game before, getting on stage. And now that that's not there, it's going to be hard to shift gears and get back into all I have to do is sit in my chair and wait for the lobby to open. That's it. It's it feels like a scrim. It's going to be hard for some people to adjust and be like, we're playing a match. We're playing an Overwatch League match in our office. So I think that's definitely going to be tough for some people.
And you could be in your PJs and shit. You don't have to be dressed up necessarily. Yeah. You don't have to worry about someone walking up hey, here's we got an interview for you in front of these people. It's I mean, you might still have to do interviews, right? But it's just a whole different setup to be had. Yep. And I feel like that's something that the coaching staff and everyone will have to adjust to pretty quickly, hopefully, because the matches start this week.
Yeah, this week, 2-3 days.
Yeah, and they start out pretty slow, it looks like. I mean, based off the schedule, it's 4 matches or 4 or 5 matches this weekend, and then it goes to 8 matches every day.
Oh, yeah, 13 matches every day. It's ridiculous.
It's gonna be crazy. Well, so we've hit a lot of the big things. We've hit how these your time. We've hit your progression through, and it's a pretty. You've honestly had a very rough go of it. Legitimately,
it's been a bumpy road.
You're not auto tier yet, not even close to auto tier necessarily, where your collective schedule wins on teams there's 6 and 80, You're not quite there by any means, but you've had a very, very rough go of it in terms of the moving the teams all the time and even the Contenders to pre-Overwatch League. Do you think that has made you has it affected your mindset as a teammate? Are you sort of just okay, what comes, I'm going to fucking pop off regardless. I'm going to be the best teammate I can be. Has it made you more team-oriented? Has it made you less team-oriented? Because teams could also be we're done with you. It's the Toy Story meme of the kid picking up Woody and I'm done playing with you. That's what teams can do to players. They can once they don't feel which is sports. That's just how competitive sports works, is that they don't feel they're valuable. But some are also worse than others. Do you think that has made you more team oriented or less team oriented in terms of your viewpoint for Overwatch League?
Yeah, it's tough because from the business side, like you said, they're going to throw you away, which is it's in sports too, and I think that's what a lot of players can understand. From a business perspective, if they think you cost too much or you haven't been playing as well, it's easy to just snap their fingers and you're gone. And I think a lot of players have to accept that and say that the org's not going to always have me around. But in the same vein, when it comes to being a part of your team, you want to be as team oriented as possible, so you have that trust and you can build that synergy in game. So it's between finding a balance of being a good teammate in game and be able to separate in game and out of game. You got to keep it pretty professional out of game. You can't always be buddy, and you got to realize that you could lose players randomly for the most ridiculous reasons, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I remember Hastro. It's not really directly to Overwatch League, but he made a tweet and he's esports is so corporate now. It's so corporate now, in terms of how everything is, and it's not the same as it was even a year or 2 years ago. Is that in your time, for Vision? Because I bet for your time in Vision, a lot of it was you just you show up on the Discord and you're fucking trolling with your teammates and like you're having a good time, obviously when you're not getting rolled, and there's not that structure that's there. But now you've entered into like, it's a job. It's like you're entering the office, you're leaving the office, you got to keep everything else in mind, you got to keep professional obligations in mind. Has that affected you as a player, do you think? Was that what you always wanted, was something that's like, yeah, I'm a pro player, like I'm wearing a jersey, jersey optional, like, okay, whatever the fuck on the jerseys, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm representing brands, I'm getting paid lots of money, and I have to have like be very regimented? Or are you more in the camp of, yo, old esports, I want to sit in my basement and eat tendies and, you know, fucking just troll and play ranked and be a god gamer and have like montages? Like, what exactly was your line, do you think, and has it shifted since playing in Overwatch League?
I've always been in favor of the newer esports, the more structured stuff. I'm a very competitive person, and I want to win all the time. So even if it's a kind of a bad mentality having scrims of winning all the time, I always want to be giving 100% and making sure things are structured. I think a lot of players struggle with that right now, is like realizing that they're playing Overwatch for a job, and coming to scrims and giving 100% isn't optional. You have to go in and give 100% to your job every day, and I think a lot of players struggle with that. But that's something that I prefer. I've always been like that. I've always been super committed to scrims and to matches. So I've always been that way. So I really enjoy with the way it's headed. It's just gonna be tougher for some players to get adjusted for sure.
Yeah, it's a big adjustment for each person. It just depends, because also they're all really young. I mean, like, how old are you right now? You're like,
I'm 23. I'm
23.
a boomer.
Yeah, you're a
and
boomer.
now,
Well, I mean, hey, I'm 25. We don't talk about boomers,
Yeah.
like, so it's definitely like, and which isn't old at all, like if you think about it. But
No.
when you think about the average age of players in esports and even staff, it's
older.
tough. You know, it's tough to think about
Yeah.
the maturity aspect that goes into it, especially if you're so used to just like, I was a kid playing video games in my mom's living room or something, and now I'm expected to show up to work 6 days a week, VOD review, practice, be as professional as possible, do interviews. Like, it's a whole different mindset to be had. And it seems like you've settled in pretty well. I mean, if you're the grinder sort and you've survived 2 major team not pandemics, I guess that's not the right word. That's not a good word for now. I would guess I would say
Boy, the word
explosions.
pandemic. Explosion, yeah.
Yeah. So you've settled in properly. And I think as you know, we're starting to near the close a little bit. We've hit most of the topics we wanted to, you know, touched upon all the facets of your excellent adventure. I know you're a weeb, so like you have what is it, McGravy's Bizarre Adventure. That's right. It's like JoJo's Bizarre, right?
Yeah, it's an anime.
That's the anime. Okay. Well, how do you feel about hero pools as sort of like as our final topic? How do you feel about hero pools and their introduction to Overwatch League and the difference they have in ranked? Like this past week in ranked, we had 2 supports banned. Weirdly, oddly enough, like you thought it was always going to be at least not necessarily the same heroes, but the same format. But it's not even the same format. Like, how does that affect for you as an Overwatch League player? How does it affect your practice and also your view as like what should a team be prioritizing, like coaching wise and player wise, with hero pools, and then that practice that and how it affects it outside of the game?
I'm a big fan of hero pools actually. Like when I first got introduced, I wasn't exactly sure. But I think the biggest concern I think a lot of people have, including myself, is like you said, the same structure between ranked and scrims and like, you know, the matches. How does a player go from, you know, for example, for me is go from playing D.Va in scrims to, you know, D.Va being banned, or like not even D.Va being banned. It's the fact that you play ranked right now and you can play nothing but Arista Sigma. That's like the only thing being played. Like how do I continue to practice outside of the game if the hero pools aren't mirrored? So I think that's been a big concern for a lot of players. But the general idea of hero pools, I think it's good. I think it avoids the fact that hero bans would have led to kind of like a stale like rock paper scissors meta where it's just back and forth between metas. I think this allows for the game to be spicier in a sense, a lot of back and forth, a lot of unknowns. Like the fact that the first week people come out playing Soldier Tracer, I don't think anybody expected that to be quote unquote the meta comp that developed that week. But I think that's super exciting for the game, and I think it's going to draw more people to play in general and bring more people to watch, which I think is really important.
But would you say we've gotten closer now in Overwatch League at least to that sort of hero, towards sort of that rock paper scissors meta now that we've added weighted additions to the heroes, right? Like, because we had Soldier got banned after getting played for the first time ever, and so then people are like, then they decided we're gonna have weighted addition for the hero selections in terms of the pools, which are based off playtime. Do you think that brings us closer to what the problem you were just talking about, or is it still, you know, keeping it in a way that we're not gonna just have a rock paper scissors or like a ping pong meta of just back and forth metas?
I think it brings it closer, but not enough to the point where it becomes a problem, right? Like I think it brings it closer, but I still think there's a lot of random RMG to it because it's only what max 4 tickets, and then even if you get 10%, you get 1. So I think there's still a reasonable amount of RNG where you get random heroes banned, like a Moira who got 10% banned. So it definitely is closer and could be a problem, but I don't see it being a problem. But I would have to see it be used before I can officially say.
You can see what the result is before the
Right.
actual result is. You can't. It's tough to make. Everyone wants to make takes on it, but it's tough to see exactly how it works.
It's tough
out
to say until it's in practice. Yeah.
Until you see it. And one final question then. What do you feel as a team, as you guys, and you've given so much praise to Packington and the staff? Do you think you guys are very adequately prepared as a roster, as an organization for hero pools? Do you think that it will make teams that are not flexible enough or don't have the right type of staff members and players and mindsets, do you think they will fail compared to you guys? Do you think you're going to come out on top with all the benefits and mindset you just talked about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our mindset is we want to be as flexible as possible, especially with the way hero pool works. And I think a lot of teams have opted to take the sort of we want to find what's meta this week and play that only kind of method. And I think that's very narrow-minded, especially it might work in the short term, but I think we're thinking more long-term, and we want to win long-term, and we want to go all the way and win. And so we're using this time early into the hero pool to kind of understand that you have to be as flexible as possible. You have to be able to play anything. And if we learn how to play stuff now, the longer we go down this road, and the longer we play hero pools, the better a team we are going to be. So I think we're only going to get better as the season goes on.
So that that finding the meta versus understanding basics of Overwatch, like the fundamentals and knowing like how to play the game, definitely a very something that I've harped upon a lot. And other people disagree. Some people are like, this is chaos, like hero pools, this is fucking chaos, like the Overwatch isn't supposed to be this way, it wasn't like this when I was there. And it's like, well, I mean, I think this prioritizes fundamentals of Overwatch a lot more, and like learning how to actually teach players the basics of the game. And so I agree with all that. Well, that is it for our time with Hero Select. We've kept McGravy here for a while. You got Scrims later. If you want to check out McGravy's channel and his Twitter, obviously where he posts about his stuff, his Twitter and his Twitch are linked below. That's all our time for today for the second episode of Hero Select. I feel like we've made good strides on the show, and it was a very good interview as well, McGravy. I appreciate you coming on. And we'll be done. Yeah, no problem. And we'll be back next week again with another player interview. I think next week we're counting on Dogman, which I'm sure will be very exciting to have Dogman. It'll be a very, very exciting one with him. Just about exciting as this one, hopefully. But we are done for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. And this will all be uploaded on Spotify. We have the RSS links for the other podcast and YouTube and stuff like that. So peace out, everybody.